Crucially's also announced a pledge to put an extra 20,000 police on the streets within 3 years. Now, an extra 20,000 coppers is going to cost £1 billion a year. He says that money that would either be borrowed or from the £26 billion headroom we're told has been set aside by Philip Hammond to cope with a no-deal Brexit. But of course, why do we need these 20,000 extra police? Is it just because we've lost 22,000 since we've had a Tory government? In which case, aren't you just backing somebody who's just going to put right the wrongs of the last few years?
Well, I think to a certain extent, Julia, I think we should be honest about this. The fact is police numbers have fallen from just over 140,000 in 2010 to about 120,000 now. I speak as an Essex MP, and I can tell you now, over the last year to this year, we have gone to the government to ask for more money for increased police numbers. And that is because of the changing nature of crime. Crime is an issue. People feel insecure when it comes to crime in their communities. And it's right that as the party that believes in law and order and supports the police, that we do much more now that we have fiscal headroom to start investing in our police force all over again.
And there's no doubt this will be a popular move. But again, we have seen pledges to increase the number of police officers on the streets from the current government. And yet we've only seen, I think, an extra 500 police or something who've actually been recruited in recent years, while we still see many more police officers taking early retirement and resigning. There's no chance in the world he's going to find an extra 20,000 officers in the next 3 years.
Well, I think actually he will. And I use Essex as an example because we have been recruiting more police officers from the additional money that we've managed to secure. We actually got 3.3 million from central government, and the 16.8 million has come from an increase in the precept, which is £2 extra month, an increase for local ratepayers. But there's been a massive police recruitment drive, and I can tell you locally in Essex it is working. So there's no reason why, through our police and crime commissioners, 60% of whom are backing Boris in this campaign as well, there is no reason why we cannot achieve the increased police numbers that Boris is proposing. And I think actually across our communities, residents will support this move.
Now, of course, there's been a lot more scrutiny of these policies as we get closer and closer. Those ballot papers going out in a couple of days to Tory party members, 160,000 of whom are going to get to choose whether they want Boris Johnson or Jeremy Hunt as their leader, and of course our next Prime Minister. And a lot more scrutiny of those spending pledges. I mean, Jeremy Hunt, an awful lot of spending pledges as well, no doubt at all about it. But Boris Johnson, more money for the police, more money for schools. He wants to increase public sector pay, cuts in income tax, raising the threshold 40% tax, cuts in national insurance across the board, a cut in stamp duty. There's an awful lot of pledges. How are they all going to be paid for? Because even John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, said you've got your own magic money tree.
Well, that is definitely not true. And I can say this as a former Treasury Minister myself, who was around during the really difficult days when we were trying to get public finances back on track. There is fiscal headroom. Now, there is fiscal headroom of approximately £26 billion. And so really, this is about choices, Julia. You know, it is about time we used our fiscal policy levers to support investment and growth in our communities, to close the opportunity gap by investing in education and skills, but also using those levers to invest again in public services. So I think it's right that Boris has spoken about, yes, investing in police officers, yes, investing in education. He's spoken this week to my colleagues in local government as well in terms of how we can do much more to invest in local government and delivering services such as special educational needs and social care. That is right that we do that off the back of something else that only Boris has spoken about, which is actually creating an economy of growth. So having the right kind of investment that can generate income from road and rail, but actually being much more catalytic in terms of our economic growth across the region.
And of course, training takes time and resources, and so many police resources have just been stripped to the bone in the last 10 years or so by successive governments, particularly the Tories and the Lib Dems since 2010, that really so many of the training resources and the facilities will all have to be sourced. The recruits will have to be selected, and that process is a very rigorous one in these days. And then, of course, you've got to deliver the training. But if there is a can-do attitude, if there is the funding, then the police are nothing if not adaptable, and I'm sure it potentially could be done. But the trouble is, the police are so beleaguered at the moment. They are so under pressure and so hugely disheartened that officers are leaving in their droves and taking such valuable experience with them that 20,000 newly recruited rookies will not make up that shortfall in experience.
Do you believe, Peter, that there is actually a direct correlation between the fall in police numbers and what we have seen as a 19% increase in violent crime since 2010? So not crime that people could perceive or, like the hate crimes where it's, subjective, but provable, people being stabbed, being robbed, being mugged, or in actually the number of murders, that we have seen that increase. Do you think that's directly as a result, at least in part, of those cuts in police numbers?
The causes behind the rises in crime are multiple, complex and not entirely straightforward as a result. But there is a correlation between police numbers and not only the rise in crime, but the police's ability to properly deal with crime, give victims the service they so desperately need and deserve, and then consequently investigate those crimes. 20,000 uniformed police officers would be a bit of a large step towards the police having greater capacity to actually police the streets. But actually what is needed is detectives, back office roles, and I know some people shudder at the thought of me saying that, but it is absolutely vital. Policing needs to be joined up from those officers at the front line in uniform to those officers who are so rarely seen, those detectives who gather, collate, disseminate the information and the evidence and consequently get people put in front of a court. But of course the entire criminal justice system is largely broken and underfunded. So this won't be one quick fix to have us living in a crime-free nirvana.